Not yet? Okay, all right. I'm pretty loud, but hopefully with the help of the mic, I'll be a little louder. Good morning, everyone. My name is Delara Motlagh. I'm the head of our cell therapy business at Catalent, and it is my honor and privilege to be leading and moderating this great panel. And before I have the panel introduce themselves, you know, listening to your story, a great introduction to this panel. You know, when I think about CAR T therapies, they have really helped to propel our sector in cell and gene therapy, not only with compelling stories and outcomes, but also providing hope to patients all over the world. So it's a great opportunity for us to be reflecting on these powerful therapies, the sector overall, and what the future holds. So with that, I'll just ask the panel to introduce themselves, and actually maybe we can start with Christian on the phone.
Everybody, apologies that I cannot be with you in Rome today. I'm still on the shore of the Mediterranean in Marseille, where I work, and I am the head of the cell therapy facility at Institut Paoli-Calmettes Comprehensive Cancer Center, with a special interest in the development and implementation of CAR T cell therapies.
Excellent. I think we've met Lucy, but maybe for those that may have joined a few minutes late.
My name's Lucy Elliker-Jones, and I'm the founder of the Opie Jones Foundation, and also mum to Opie, who was the 9th paediatric patient in Europe to have CAR T, which has seen his cancer. Well, he's been cancer-free for 3 years in July, at the ripe old age of 4.
Unbelievable. Emil?
Hi, good morning. I'm Emil Cochino. I'm a physician. I work for the European Medicines Agency. I work as a risk management specialist, and I work with all advanced therapy medicinal products approved by the European Union, and obviously with the CAR Ts, mostly focusing on the post-marketing evidence generation, interaction with HTA payers, and so on. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Ang. I'm privileged to be CEO of Vor Bio, a cell therapy company based in Massachusetts. We're making CAR Ts as well as stem cell transplants for acute myeloid leukemia, which is another blood cancer, mostly affecting adults.
Excellent. Well, thank you. As you can see, we have a very diverse panel, and looking forward to hearing everyone's perspective. Maybe just to start, you know, as we reflect back, Demi-Decade, as the title of the panel shows, of these therapies, real life and market, I would just like to hear a reflection from each of the panelists. You know, what are you most proud of in this journey? Maybe Robert, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I don't think cell therapies could have had a better bang, like the CAR T. That being said, the very first cell therapy probably was what Opie got originally, which is the stem cell transplant, right? And that was a revolution 50 years ago, where you could take a patient who has diseased bone marrow and find a match somewhere else. Could be a complete stranger, as in Opie's case, could be a sibling, could be a child or parent, and have those cells magically migrate to bone marrow and repopulate the patient's blood and immune system. I mean, that is a revolution, and was really the first type of cell therapy. But with CAR Ts, holy cow, I mean, talk about a potent hammer, something that is distinctly programmed to hunt and kill cancer cells, and it does so with such incredible efficiency. You know, probably what happened in Opie's body is that these cells started recognizing the cancer and then stimulated themselves to do more of that, to end up populating 10, 20, 40% of his blood system, all hunting that same cancer, so that even if it was hiding out like it was after stem cell transplant, that stuff is gone too. I mean, that's just incredible. We can actually do that with a medicine. And so, you know, I think thinking about what we're doing today, extending that from ALL to other diseases, to even solid tumors, to other kinds of blood cancers, now even applying it to inflammatory conditions. I mean, we're in a whole new world.
Agree. Emil?
Well, European Medicines Agency is the regulator, so it stands between the impressive clinical trial results and access to the market. So sometimes it's seen as maybe as a hurdle up for the applicants. But I'm extremely proud that in the past year we have managed to give a positive opinion for 6 products in European Union, and I'm most proud of the fact that at the time of the review of the file, we have found a way, and before the application, providing support, and we have found a way through conditional marketing authorization to working with the applicants to manage the risks and to better train the healthcare professionals and the patients, to finding a way to extend the post-marketing safety and efficacy surveillance, and to give a positive benefit-risk opinion that then enable the products to enter the EU market. So I think it's a joint effort with the industry as well, and with the patients and with the healthcare professionals as part of our committees and scientific review. So I think that's one thing that we're really proud at EMA, making these life-saving medicines available to patients in Europe.
Absolutely, and well said. You know, we think of the innovations often with the therapy itself, but we've had to innovate across the ecosystem, including in the MOHs and how we're engaging in order to get these products to market. So thank you. Lucy?
Well, obviously, my son's life was saved because of a CAR-T product. And it's incredible, like how you were explaining it. They explain it to us that it's the SAS of treatment. So they hide and they hunt, and that's what they do. And it's incredible. And the fact that he was able to have that has saved his life.
That is truly the reason that we're all here. So thank you, Christian.
Yes, I would add to what has already been said that giving access to CAR T cells also required tremendous effort on the hospital side to adapt and to adjust to this new class of medicinal products. This is the first time actually that cell therapy is delivered through a central manufacturing organization rather than point-of-care manufacturing. And this requires on the hospital side to tightly cooperate with manufacturers, pharma companies, and biotech. And this draws a lot of resource, which is quite often overseen. And included in this resource is what has already been mentioned, the long-term surveillance of these products, post-authorization safety studies and post-authorization efficacy studies. And I think what we can be really proud of is the fact that in real-world conditions, the results with CAR T cells are very similar to the results that were obtained in the original registration trials, showing that a centrally manufactured cell therapy can be safely given to patients with similar efficacy to what was seen originally in rather small groups of patients.
It is definitely compelling to see the not only the outcomes but the how they're able to be sustained and replicate. Maybe Christian, while you're up, you know, as you think about the insights and what we've learned so far, can you share a key insight that you've had on this journey?
Yeah, I would say we are now 6 years behind the first approvals, and obviously we can all be happy with patients who've seen their life saved, and obviously very happy for you and for your child. However, we still have progress to make because some patients do relapse or do not respond to CAR T cells. So there is a lot of work to be done to extend the original results to other populations of patients to improve the cure rate. And maybe what is really encouraging if we think of lymphoma is the fact that while the original approvals were for third-line lymphoma, there has been 3 randomized trials published a couple of years ago. And in itself, running randomized trials for cell therapies is already an achievement. 2 of these randomized trials were positive, allowing to treat patients earlier in the course of their diseases in second line rather than in third line. And obviously the response rate, the overall response rate is better in second line than what it is in third line, with, in some instances, an advantage in overall survival, which is really an achievement. So I think we still need to make progress, but we already have seen how we can better use the already approved products.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, and hopefully a trend that continues as we bring these therapies more and more into the front line. Maybe, Robert, from your perspective, as you think of learnings and insight as a therapeutic developer.
Yeah, sure. So I think even within Opi's story, there's a few things to learn, right? So one aspect is he had a cancer that used, and eventually developed a therapy that used his own cells, right? So they harvested T cells from his body that they could then program with these CAR constructs. Now, autologous CAR T still holds probably the best outcomes that we have today. The trouble is, poor Opie had just undergone a ton of chemo and also underwent a stem cell transplant, carpet bombing his bone marrow, which happens to make T cells. And so he honestly was very fortunate to have enough T cells in his body to generate that CAR T. They could have easily picked up the phone and said, look, I'm sorry, it's just not enough. Couldn't make it. You know, the alternatives, we've had a lot of work go into allogeneic off-the-shelf approaches. So instead of the SAS, as you talk about, they're kind of like rent-a-cop, right? And you know, sometimes they just don't work quite as well. And we're seeing that and trying to make these better, but you know, sometimes it's, your own body is too smart. It knows when something foreign is administered. And so I'm talking really just about harnessing and really understanding the soldier that carries the gun. It's not just good enough to have a good gun. You really need to understand the soldier carrying the gun and how to best utilize that as part of your therapy. The second point that's worth noting is that OP probably had a cancer relating to B cells in his blood that start growing uncontrollably. And he's also fortunate in another way where B cells are essentially biologically dispensable. You can wipe out a patient's B cell compartment and they're generally pretty healthy. If your cancer affects something else, you need a heart, you need lungs, you need bone marrow. Oftentimes the cancer affects organs or systems that you need for your survival. And so bringing the power of CAR Ts beyond dispensable populations like B cells or plasma cells, how else can we harness this with that degree of power, but still maintain a viable patient after the therapy?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point, especially as we start to look at the broadening of this therapy going forward, and beyond cancer even, right? Which is exciting. So Emil, what are your thoughts? What is a key insight and learning that you've learned that you can share?
Yeah. We've learned a lot about these products even after approval. So that was a key learning for me. It's not not a fixed picture. So especially in the management of adverse drug reactions, we have seen better clinical follow-up, better recommendation, clinician being more and more experienced dealing with CRS and ICANS. And we had this, as Christian was saying, we definitely see the same good results, but we're actually seeing even better safety profile by increasing the experience, and we're talking about 25,000 patients in post-marketing setting treated with this product. So it's not just a very new drug that nobody knows about it, that it was at the beginning. We're talking about people having experience and managing these patients. And we had some learnings which we hoped we wouldn't have had. For example, how to deal with the tocilizumab shortage during the COVID because of diversion. So yeah, I mean, that's the kind of things that keeps us on our toes in post-marketing setting, and that's the positive kind of, because we managed to deal with that really well. On the negative side, there is a little bit of disconnect between the clinician treating the patients and knowing everything there is to know about the patients, the color of their eyes and how many times they come to the clinic and when is their next appointment due. And taking all that surveillance data, all that safety and efficacy follow-up and getting into the hands of regulators so we can reassess and reevaluate the benefit-risk profile. There is something in the middle that's maybe not working as we hoped 5 years ago. But we at the agency and myself exactly have been putting a lot of efforts into working with the data sources across Europe. We have launched Darwin, which is the EMA-led project with a lot of efforts put into better visibility of data sources. And I think making the connection between the fantastic follow-up of the clinicians and the regulators, I think it's the next step to better follow this. And we're talking, I mean, we're all thinking about the safety follow-up, and we're all thinking about ongoing evaluations of signals and so on. So I think that's a learning, and I think that's a learning that keeps on giving, and it's not yet written. I mean, we're going to have with the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee an estimated outcome of a signal maybe in June. So let's see. What are the recommendations, and I think sample collection, analysis, I think something that needs maybe to be better in Europe, and I think that's one of the learnings we're going to come
Excellent.
with.
I mean, I think the ongoing learning that this industry will have from the data that's continuing to build is phenomenal. And I've been really impressed by the level of collaboration that the MOHs have with the developers and the clinicians to be able to help us on our journey.
If I may say one more thing, I mean, OP's case, when you said that they had to do the second apheresis, and thinking about what Robert was saying, that maybe wouldn't have had enough, then putting on top of that, setting something aside for maybe a down the line long-term safety analysis, it's very difficult from the regulator to say, yeah, you will not give this product unless you have enough material to put on the side just in case something happens 3 years down the line. So I think it's something that we definitely as regulator are aware, and patients are first, that's clear, and that's why we have the patients' voice always in the committees and in the scientific groups. But we need to find a way to make sure that these medicines are both life-saving and safe.
Absolutely. No, that it's important to keep the patient first, and having a balanced risk profile, right? The risk-benefit there is clearly strong. So Lucy, from as a mom and as a patient advocate, just reflecting on some of the comments you made and some of the tangential things that we see that folks don't always think about. Maybe can you share a key insight from your perspective for us to have a better idea of the journey as well as what we can do about it?
I think firstly, picking up from what you were talking about with OP cells, you know, if he'd have had access to CAR-T first, then, like you said, his body wouldn't have been through, and his cells wouldn't have been put through so much. And I know in America they use CAR-T as a bridge to bone marrow in some cases. And actually, I know of patients who are like, you know, we were a bridge, but we're 6 years down the line and we don't need that bone marrow transplant, so we've still got that in the bag. And talking of learning, when I think back to finding out about Emily Whitehead and her story, and how Tom talks about, you know, how ill she was and how they used the drug, the one I can't pronounce, to, you know, with her CRS as a trial, let's see if that works. Whereas in Opie's case, they were like, yep, there's a sign, we're giving it to him. So Opie got leg twitches, told them about, and they were like, that's a sign of his cytokine release syndrome, and we need to give him the drug. And so his visit to intensive care was 10 hours, whereas 10 years ago when Emily experienced that, it was much longer and much more serious. In terms of sort of learning and talking about more professionals and people in the industry being aware of it, Lewis and I have taken OP to review appointments, and there are still healthcare professionals, consultants who don't know about what CAR-T is. And that's really important. That's one of the things that the foundation that we want to do, is we want to make, you know, bring awareness using OP's story and talking about, you know, to medical students and doctors in hospitals, that actually be inquisitive about these other things, because it's only by more people knowing about them in the industry and in the healthcare, with, you know, healthcare professionals, the inquisitiveness, asking the questions, finding out about it, you know, exploring whether that's an option for your patient. Yeah. Hopefully we'll bring these products to patients sooner. And I think I said before, these treatments don't work for every patient. No treatment works for every patient. But if we can use the kinder ones first, then all those things that you've talked about, you know, are on the patient's side, aren't they? You know, to help that patient sooner.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity, and you've highlighted a lot of great learnings. I think the panel has, but there's still so much to learn. And you're right, there isn't a thing that works for everyone, but we need to increase that access and continue to get these into patients, and of course the learning that comes with that. You know, I venture to say the challenges are certainly not all unsurfaced. There's more that will face us, I think, as a community, as a sector, that we need to overcome. But, you know, and maybe, Emil, I'll start with you on this question. As you think about, you know, what other challenges do we need to tackle as a community in order to further these therapies?
Well, as I said, I'm more focused on the post-marketing surveillance. So I think we have worked hard in the past years to get this data from the patients to the regulators. So I think there's still room for improvement there. We're not capturing all the patients in Europe. The data that we're capturing, it's maybe not as high quality as we wanted. And then you have a little bit of a disconnect between the treatment center. For example, I think in Finland, maybe like 5 hospitals that can administer CAR-Ts, whereas the long-term follow-up is done closer to the patient's home. And there's a lot of doctors that are treating the patients which might not know much about CAR-T. So I think there is a challenge there to improve education to a wider audience, and everyone that is involved in the healthcare of the patients in long term as well needs to know better about these CAR-Ts. And then obviously you have the challenge, which is outside of EMA, thankfully, but still a challenge about the reimbursement and with the payers. But we're working with HTA to make sure that the data requirements for the manufacturers are aligned. So we're talking about not having to duplicate the post-marketing follow-up, because the uncertainties that are for the regulators are also uncertainties for HTAs, and sometimes even bigger. So whereas they work for a lot of patients, and that's great, we need also to find out why they don't work or why there's some side effects, and if there's anything we can do to optimize this. I think there's still research to be done there. So payers definitely want to know that the medicines work, and there is not just life-saving, but also thinking in a broader healthcare system. So I think there's this type of challenges for the patients. I cannot speak on the patients, but I know there's challenges for the manufacturers, and they have been driving the push with the legislators, with the availability of tools from the regulators such as EMA, and then now smaller developers that are coming behind and reaping those kind of benefits. But I think we should see it as a general community that's trying to help patients, and we're trying definitely to put all the tools available, but we can have a little bit more to better capture the early developments from academic centers, and even thinking about the future a little bit. One challenge is how close the drug is to the patient, the medicine is to the patient, and having a central point, yes, works, but what if having smaller time between apheresis and infusion works even better, and there's definitely clinical data showing that will improve the results. So a local GMP site closer to the patient's home, there's maybe something that we can think about, and then I think maybe the academic developers will have a little bit of a role there. Maybe the big companies will change a little bit the focus. But we're definitely at European Medicines Agency encouraging early development, and even if maybe the academic developers will not go to be in the end the marketing authorization holder, the more they can progress with different type, and we were talking about managing ADRs, and clinicians were the one pushing with fractional dose or with different type of administration. And I think this is what drives, and as I said, I think we're still learning, and I think we can improve also for an earlier administration, and if it's proven to be effective. And
yeah. Look, I think you've highlighted a lot of different challenges that it is an industry we need to look at, and I think kind of tying that thread of the different streams of data, being able to tell the value story, being able to use that to educate payers, but also to educate the physician community and others. These are all very important, and of course, the evolution of tools to help the manufacturing so that it's robust, no matter where the point of manufacture is. All really key points. Robert, from your perspective, as you look at challenges that we're still facing, can you lend a thought there?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do at Vor is extend the power of what was seen with OP into other cancers, particularly AML. So AML is a blood cancer, similar to BLLL, but unfortunately it's a disease of the bone marrow where certain cells, myeloid cells, become cancerous. Now, what we're doing is really the following. We have soldiers, SAS soldiers, similar to what OP got, right? These soldiers attack a protein called CD33. And CD33 is expressed on a lot of these AML blasts. So it's perfect, very similar story to Kymriah and the soldiers that OP got. There's one particular issue, though, that CD33 is also expressed on healthy bone marrow cells. So you give these SAS soldiers, if you successfully wipe out your cancer, you're also wiping out that patient's healthy bone marrow. And again, that's not a situation that's compatible with survival. There's another issue is that a lot of times these patients get chemotherapy potentially even deeper than what OP got. And you end up with a situation where the cells, the patient's own cells, are just not sufficient to make a CAR T. So we're doing a biological trick. This is something that could have happened in OP, but they're really not trying it yet in B cells. But instead of originally harvesting from OP, and by the way, that second leukapheresis he got, that saved his life, right? Because he just wouldn't have had enough cells otherwise. But instead of harvesting cells from OP and trying to get a 4-year-old to sit still for 8 hours.
1-year-old at the time.
Oh, sorry.
At the time.
That's nuts. We are going back to the original stem cell donor because that stem cell donor repopulated OP's blood system and immune system, has exactly matched cells to OP. But that healthy donor has never seen chemo, right? So those soldiers are so much more healthy than OPs. So that's one thing that we're doing with our CAR T. But the second is we want essentially a clinical situation exactly the same as OP, where he's healthy, he's cancer-free, and he has these SAS soldiers floating around in his bloodstream hunting anything to do with B cells or B-cell lymphoma. That's the ideal situation. That's a cure, right? Again, you can't do that in other cancers because if my soldiers survive, they will still wipe out the blood system. And so what we're doing is we're making a shielded bone marrow at the same time. So the bone marrow complements the soldiers. The bone marrow, we are removing CD33 expression using CRISPR engineering. And by removing that protein, we're now making that bone marrow bulletproof and shielded against the soldiers attacking that same protein. So that, we hope, will be a scenario where we could harness exactly that same power of the CAR T, but apply it to a completely different cancer, which is AML. It's complicated, really complicated, but we already have some clinical data which looks really interesting. I think this year is going to be a very important year where we really demonstrate that power of the CAR T.
Well, it's exciting to see the creativity that goes into trying to not only understand the science, but to be able to overcome, particularly as you mentioned, right? Not only are we going to target these sick cells, but we want to make sure that there aren't casualties in the healthy population as well that's remaining. Christian, as you think about the challenges that are facing us and continue to, can you share a key one that's top of mind for you?
Absolutely. A lot has been said already, and there are fascinating technological developments such as the one that Robert just described. What I would like to stress is the fact that for existing CAR T cells that are all autologous in nature at the moment, the challenge is really access to the treatment. There are data in real-world conditions showing that not all patients who could benefit from receiving CAR T cells do receive the treatment, and there are a number of reasons. Manufacturing capacities in some instances, hospital capacities in other instances, not to mention low-income countries where basically access to this category of treatments is just impossible. So we have to work on that, and I would say on the academic side, hospital side, university side, we have to train more people. Lucy rightly stressed the fact that there are physicians who are not aware of what are CAR T cells. There are nurses who are not aware of what are CAR T cells. And this may be normal, actually, because you can access those treatments to only selected hospitals, and most of the general hospitals would have to refer their patients to treating hospitals, and this is also something we can work better. We must work better to have timely referral of candidate patients to hospitals. We have to train more scientists, more engineers, to contribute to the supply chain. And professional associations such as the European Hematology Association or the European Society for Blood and Marrow Transplantation or ESMO, the European Society for Medical Oncology, are working on that, producing education material, designing habilitation tracks for various categories of patients, for various categories of professionals, sorry. And obviously, we also need to talk to patients to better understand how they see their treatments and all the conditions in which they receive their treatment. They are home away, they are away from home for extended period of times. So what CAR T cells have revealed is that we really need to get all the stakeholders together to speed up access to these new categories of treatments. And let me make a last point. CAR T cells are only one of the advanced therapies that are coming to the market. Other advanced therapies are coming to the market for other types of disease and other groups of patients, and I think this is really good news for patients. But that will, again, increase the pressure on hospitals to mobilize new and additional human resource to provide access to these treatments. So this will be a tremendous effort, I would say, in the next decade.
It's an excellent point. I think the point of education, both in awareness, but also in training the entire infrastructure that's needed to support these therapies is absolutely critical. And Lucy, as you think about some of the unique challenges that you have personally faced with your family, what other challenges do you think we still need as an industry to overcome?
One of the key things is time, which when you talk about Opie, for example, from when he had his cells collected to when they were sent off to America and before he got them back, that was maybe 3.5 weeks, maybe. And he became so poorly in that time. His leukemia just took off like it was having a party. It was, he was so incredibly poorly. So reducing the time that a patient has to wait to receive those life-saving, those products means that you're going to have a patient who is in a better position health-wise to be able to receive those products. And that's really, I think, crucial and important. And the other point talking about the healthcare systems, the hospitals and the places that treat patients are set up to give the treatments that are 50 years old, that we've been using and that we know work, and that's what we use. And there's a whole ecosystem around a patient that will need to change in order to be able to embrace the new medicines that are coming through. And that change will happen, as it did 50 years ago when stem cell transplants, came in and chemotherapy was used. But we're going to have to support everything, and we'll only do that by working together. Every single part needs to work together for the patient.
I think that is a fantastic statement, right? That all of these different moving pieces have to come together in order to support a single patient, but also all the patients that need the therapy. If we pivot a bit and now look more to the future, and I'm going to pull the thread of the hospitals that you just mentioned, and maybe a provocative question, but is our healthcare system ready for these advanced therapies? Maybe we'll start with you, Lucy.
I mean, our experiences in the UK, Addenbrooke's, Great Ormond Street, they're world-leading hospitals in their field, and they're certainly a lot more ready than I guess they have been. But there's still much more to do, right down to educating, everybody who's involved in a patient's journey about these products, how patients are treated afterwards, there's definitely scope for more treatment at home to keep a patient out of hospital. You know, I firmly believe that at the time Opie was treated with an immunotherapy as part of his before bone marrow transplant. And we were home for 20 days. So he was on a pump for 24 hours, and we just went back to the hospital every 4 days, that to be changed. But in that time, he started eating again, he started rolling over again, he was just well, he had Christmas dinner, you know, he was a well, happy baby apart from this pump. And therefore, the impact and cost on the hospital and the healthcare system was a lot less because he was being cared for at home. And he became a well child again. So that there has to be more thought around and more preparation and support around how can we help patients to be treated at home.
And that's such an important point. I mean, if you look at other parts of the market, other therapeutic areas, that pivot to home and treatment is certainly a trend. When you are dealing with more advanced therapies and complex therapies that require a massive infrastructure, that becomes a more challenging ask. However, you know, I'm optimistic that we will be able to figure that out because of all the reasons that you just articulated, that patients do better. So I think that's excellent. Christian, as you think about, you know, the increasing number of these therapies, you know, what is your thought on the healthcare system and readiness and what it would take?
I think it will be, the healthcare system will be under great pressure for several of the reasons that you mentioned. Advanced therapies require a specific organization on the hospital side. You need to extend capacities of different infrastructures, including the pharmacy that needs equipment with low temperature cryostorage, including the apheresis facilities. Apheresis facilities, you know, have been overseen for many years as a sort of technical activity, but I can tell you it's quite difficult to find nurses, to find physicians who get trained in this activity. So I think the hospital system will be under pressure. Obviously, the pricing of these innovative therapies is quite high, although today CAR T cells may look, I'll be provocative, but may look quite cheap as compared to the latest advanced therapies that have been approved that could cost as much as 4 million euros. But the cumulative cost of those drugs will be very significant on the budget of the public or private healthcare payers. So I think the healthcare system will really face a challenge, a global challenge. Advanced therapies, by the way, are not the only expensive drugs. If you think of bispecific antibodies, the cumulative cost of treating a patient comes in the same range as giving a CAR T cells. But yeah, we'll face a challenge. I still remain optimistic that we'll be able to adapt, and I think that all the patients that can be treated and can benefit of these new therapies, this is obviously great news. But if we want, again, to extend the benefit to all candidate patients, we need to carefully think how we need to network countries such as European countries. Let me stress again that CAR T cells are not equally accessible in all European countries. France is quite lucky, but in some other countries, it's more difficult for patients to get access. So yes, big challenge. We remain optimistic. We need to work collectively to address these challenges.
Absolutely. And I think that network of not just a single hospital system, but across different systems is also a really important point. You know, when I think of the role of healthcare systems, not just in Europe, but in the US and other parts of the world, and Lucy, you said this earlier, they're used to dealing with chronic illnesses and then acute injuries. And what we're asking of them in these advanced therapies is to really innovate beyond that, especially as our therapeutic developers bring new therapies. So Robert, from your perspective, how do you see the role of the healthcare systems and not only some of the level of readiness, but what we need to do to support that readiness?
Yeah, so I think from the developer side of things, our main focus is to make transformative products, right? Because if we can have outcomes like OPs and we can repeat them on a consistent basis, that at least gives us a chance and a justification why things should be made accessible, why things should be reimbursed. Yes, we all need to work on cost of goods, and that's very important in the equation. I think, firstly, it needs to work, and yes, we need to make incremental changes, including things like turnaround time to make sure we can get it back to patients very quickly. But I would say that if we fast forward 10 years from now, we're having the same conversation. The products that the OPs of the world would be getting to in 10 years will look nothing like they are today. And I think it's because, let's think about what Kymriah is today. It is autologous cells. Again, we know some of the difficulties with that. It is a drug product that's roughly 30% pure. So there's 70% of other stuff in there that hopefully doesn't do any harm, but you don't really know. That's also very poorly characterized. So again, these soldiers could be terribly unhealthy. You got no choice. You're putting them back, fingers crossed, right? And then we also have now this black box warning that's on Kymriah and all the CAR-Ts done by FDA because of this random insertion of this lentivirus that they use to program the T cells. And, yes, it has a very rare chance it can cause cancer, but of course, when you're dying of cancer, you really don't have a choice. But as developers, we do have a choice. So we can do things like think about targeted insertion strategies that really intimately finds a location that we think is safe to put a CAR instead of just randomly letting a virus do it. We have the ability to think beyond the standard 30 to 40% insertional, efficiency. Maybe we could get a 95% pure product sometime in the future. What if we also had characterization of release specs that really intimately understood the health of these soldiers, that really predicted that these cells could get to 20, 30% of the patient's blood system and truly wipe out that cancer in a predictable way. So I think that we're still in our infancy, right? And I just hope as developers we're faithful in pursuing the science, not just settling. And hopefully then the health systems can justify the transformative outcomes that we're targeting.
That's a really excellent point, and I think as developers continue to get more creative, but also learning from the past and having products with greater purity and understanding the impact that has is key. I think naturally then the regulators have to help us think through what the consequence of that is. So Emil, as you think about some of these advancements, what is your thought from a regulatory perspective of questions that we still need to answer in order to impact not only the healthcare systems, but ultimately getting these therapies to market?
Difficult question, because we have early interaction with developers, right? So we give scientific advice, we tell them how to proceed with their clinical development to bring to the regulators the right kind of evidence to enable earlier lines, new indications, new products, a completely new set of diseases. So that's what we provide. We provide a lot of support early. So we can help also so EMA's Committee for Advanced Therapies, the CAT, it's made by clinicians. It's made by people working with these products. And if they're in regulatory agencies in the member states, these are the ones that are approving clinical trials and reviewing the files early on in the development. So we do have this ear to the ground, to the clinicians, to what is needed, and we rely on the learned societies then for the post-authorization education and so on. So I think what we can do better is to identify the needs, to make a case and to be aware and taking into account the patient's needs and the healthcare professionals' needs, and balance and find the regulatory way for these new products to come. Obviously, for us, it's the pipelines. We unfortunately some delays for ATMPs. We have planned submission date and then a letter saying that it's 5 months later and then another 6 months later. So that also creates a problem for the evaluation system because availability of assessors and so on. So I think we can do better working with the industry to do the forecasting better and to manage expectations. Less about the products from the clinical point of view, because until we see the file, for us it's a little bit difficult to comment ahead of time. But we're seeing obviously early signs, and we have the Innovative Therapies Task Force, and we see early developments. We're then supporting them with the PRIME scheme to get additional clinical and regulatory support. So I think there is a bright future for advanced therapies, and we've just approved the off-the-shelf product. We're reviewing topical administration of an ATMP. So I think are all interesting developments to see, and yeah, I mean, we're optimistic about the future, and CAR-Ts are here to stay in one way or another. So I think we're supporting that.
No, which is fantastic. And look, I think, when you think about a living therapy and some of the uniqueness, not only in developing these therapies, but in regulating them to ensure that they're both safe and effective, it takes a learning. And so I think one of the key themes that we're hearing is some of that, the data, the learning. But I think one of the points that you made, Emil, that's really key is that interaction early with the developers so that you can help with the information in hand, knowing what we know, being able to guide the development and the regulatory engagement to make sure that we can put the right measures in place. Now, we've talked a lot about the patient impact, and obviously the number one priority for all of us is to get more of these therapies to patients and to increase access. So maybe we'll start, Christian, with you as you think about what's it going to take for us to be able to treat more patients?
Again, we need to invest more resource, more human resource, because I think the key is mostly human resource rather than equipment. And we need to further train healthcare professionals to what are advanced therapies, how to use them timely and properly in each medical context. And healthcare professionals need to work together with developers, with manufacturers, and again with patients and patients' families, and to bring those treatments in the most efficient and most cost-efficient way to the patients who need them.
Absolutely, and this theme of training and getting the workforce ready, I think is so important. I know ARM has an initiative in workforce training, and many of the different stakeholders, like you said, developers as well as different manufacturers that are leaning in to help provide that training to get the workforce ready. I think that's absolutely critical. Robert, as you think about from a developer's perspective, what are some of the things that you think about in order to be able to get these, to be able to treat more patients?
I think about the regulators. So here's a practical example. When OP got his cells collected, so they hook him up to this machine, makes some loud noises. It basically actively sorts T cells from other kinds of cells, right? Now, if he were to have, if he were to have had an autologous bone marrow transplant, stem cell transplant, he's actually hooked up to exactly the same machine, right? But prior to that, they would have given him these medications to help mobilize his stem cells into his blood. So G-CSF, plerixafor are often used in this setting. Now, the cells, the T cells that you collect even in that process, the stem cell harvest process, those T cells, according to FDA, are deemed different to the T cells they collected later. Why? I mean, it comes from OP, right? It's because he got these medications beforehand, these mobilizers. And according to the regs, depending how you read them, that may be considered different starting material to if he didn't get those medications. And that may technically require a whole new IND application by us as developers to the FDA. Either that or, a whole battery of comparability experiments that hopefully read out, in a positive way. And so we're trying to do things and innovate at the same time that we have to fit within certain regulatory boundaries. And, I think a lot of our work is a dance around what we can innovate and push forward strongly versus, and that we think is safe, of course, versus, what the law or the regulations say.
No, it's a balance for sure, and one that we have to get in front of to be able to treat these patients. I'm looking at time. I know we're a bit over. One as a final thought, I would just like to hear, your call to action as different members of this ecosystem that are driving these therapies forward. Maybe Emil, we'll start with you. What is your call to action to this community?
Yeah, just come to talk to us if you're planning to market the product in Europe, and I don't think you can exclude this market. Come to talk to us early. The earlier, the better. Whether you're a big company or you're an SME, whether you're an academic developer, or you're a clinician that is running clinical trials, come to talk to us early. Come to talk to your member state, national competent authority, and see if they can refer you to us for an early interaction. The better we talk, the earlier we talk, and the more we talk, the more complete the file, the earlier the application, fewer steps for assessment, earlier approval. That's absolutely clear. That's no questions. So in terms of regulators, as picking up on Robert, we are also writing the guidance as we get the products along, right? So nobody knows how to monitor the new product, that it's a new breakthrough therapy, and we're as well doing the same. So I think that kind of early interaction also allows us to prepare the guidance that before you come for an application, you will have all the information needed to prepare the file and then ensure a successful opinion. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Emil. And maybe as a final word, what is your call to action to this community?
To remember why you're doing it, which is for the patient, and always remember the patient in everything you do, that each part that you are working in is not alone, and by working together is how you will make change and make patient lives better.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I know we're a bit over, so we'll close here. I know the panelists will be available if you have any additional questions. Thank you for your time, and I think said very well. Let's always keep the patient in mind and know that each of you are helping to advance this sector and to treat more patients in the end. So thank you for your time.